Hello, this is Jeff Tomlinson. Welcome to Finding Joe, the Hero's Journey podcast. You're going to hear some stories, some adventures, some challenges, some insights from people probably not unlike yourself that have been moving through life. There was a fork in the road, there was a change. They had to go up against something, a challenge, a transformation, a life change, perhaps. And then they come back. They return. They bring back the gifts of that journey, that hero's journey, based on the work of Joseph Campbell. I think you'll hear the timeless truths that are represented here, but represented in a way that we can all relate to. Also, we will have some takeaways at the end, some completion, also a recording, a guided meditation that can help to integrate the wisdom and content from the Hero's Journey podcast. This podcast began from the inspiration of doing yoga teacher trainings for many years and hearing people's stories, the reasons that some of them started on a spiritual quest to move beyond the challenges they were facing in their day-to-day. It was very inspiring. I suggest you watch the film Finding Joe, an excellent example of these timeless truths represented in a way that we can all relate to. And finally, I'll add that working in schools for the past 10 years, I've got to see what is happening, that there's a change, a disruption, a moving away from a groundedness and really the foundations of relationship and community that are universal. So I hope you can appreciate this podcast that will help maybe bring some of that relatedness, that connection through the stories and the experiences that we all share. Welcome to today's podcast of the Hero's Journey, Finding Joe. I hope you watching this or listening to this have watched the movie by now, Finding Joe. Great film, great context, some inspiration there. And I think we're going to be inspired today as well. Tahea is joining me. Thank you for joining us, Tahea. She's going to go through her story and, her hero's journey. I was going to put an S on there. I think there's a rich story here that we will recognize. So I'm here to support Tahea, to, listen, and, at some point I'll come back in and ask a question or do some completion at the end. But I'm going to invite Tahea to introduce herself, and then then we'll move into the journey. So welcome, Tahea. When you want to introduce yourself, say a little bit of whatever you'd like.
Thank you, Jeff. First, I'd like to thank you for having me here and asking me to be part of this journey. So a little bit about myself. Currently, I am a support worker at a homeless shelter here in Penticton in British Columbia. I am just completing college to get my addictions counseling and community health services diploma, which I'm super excited about. I have 4 more weeks of practicum. I'm working my practicum right now at a place called Pathways Addiction Services here in Penticton as well, co-hosting early recovery workshop. I did just recently have a major career change, because prior to me being a support worker for the past 2 years at a homeless shelter, I worked for BC Ambulance, which I still work for very, very part-time now. I absolutely love what I do with British Columbia Ambulance Services. So I worked with them full-time for 5 years, but I've been practicing paramedicine for approximately 10 years. Love every minute of it. My heart was in there. I always knew that I needed to be somebody to help people. My path in the helping field actually started 18 years ago. I went to school I knew I wanted to help, but I didn't know how to help people other than to be a nurse. So I actually went to university and I did a little bit of time there to become a nurse. And I quickly realized that that's not where my heart was, and that was not how I wanted to help others. So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Without taking off into like into
No,
the
no, no.
attic.
I think that's I love that you talked about the BC ambulance service. And I didn't know that you had started nursing back then. That's interesting too. But I really appreciate that you recognize, okay, this is not where, instead of forcing it, that's a little hero's journey right there. I'm sure of like, okay, well, this is not where I'm going. I'm guided somewhere else. But yeah, I just appreciate the service for the ambulance service in BC, which is a powerful service. Having done a little bit of volunteering in that field, and just the hard work and the passion, that I'm sure so many people in that field, first responders, etc., are just a special group of people. So thank you for doing that. But I get the transition, and congratulations on graduating. I knew that, but it was cool that you put that on the podcast too, that like you're done, you're moving on, which is good.
Yes.
Congrats. Yay. Woo. Confetti.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's dive into the hero's journey in terms of, the story that you are going to share with us and how life was going along, in that period before there was the fork in the road and change towards the challenge began. So take it away. I'm here, and it's your time.
Well, I want to start off when you first approached me. You were very interested how you knew I was married to a man for 13 years. We split up and separated 3 years ago now. And then I became engaged to a woman, and I'm very happily engaged. And I was like, well, hold on a second. I'm like, you want a story? I got a story for you.
Right.
So Jeff and I had a conversation, and I really spilled the beans to him about my past. As a child, I was very seriously abused and traumatized, been, physically, mentally, emotionally abused. My mom was a very sick person. I would I ran away many times. I didn't care where I needed to go. I actually went straight to the ministry, and I'm like, you need to take me away from this woman. Like, I don't care where you put me, just take me away.
Wow.
And the first few times they would send me back home with my mom, where I would get, well, I would get beat up for doing that. Eventually, they finally did take me away from my mom, and they sent me to go live with my dad. We didn't have a whole lot of money, so a lot of my needs I went without. I went without food. I went without basic feminine products. I went without a winter jacket in Winnipeg. And for those of you that don't know, Winnipeg gets to about -50 in the winter time. So we lived in a really bad neighborhood in Winnipeg, and I became friends with with a group of people that took care of me. I guess you can call it kind of the gang life. I was getting into fights probably about once a week. 90% of the time, it was in self defense. It was just the neighborhood that we lived in. But the people that I hung out with, they gave me winter jackets, and they provided me with feminine products, and they
Hmm.
gave me a bed to sleep in. And so, although we got into a lot of trouble, I was safe.
Hmm.
I was being taken care of. Um, so that was a good chunk of my childhood. I did fall victim of drugs. I did a lot of drugs. I was pretty much deemed an alcoholic by the time I was 13 years old. It was just the life that I lived. It was the life that was handed to me. When I was 18, I became a stripper. And I did that for a couple of years. Again, still heavy into the drug scene, still hanging around with gang members. And I'm saying a lot. I don't know if you guys can tell. This is a story that I actually don't share with many people. And so if I seem a little nervous, it's because I am.
Absolutely. Support for that. Yeah.
But it's a story that I want to share because I've really grown from it. So I ended up overdosing when I was 20. And at that point, I kind of knew that I've gone a little too far. And it wasn't until I overdosed that I realized that I actually do want to live. I think before that, I didn't really care. I didn't care a lot about my life. I didn't care about the direction I was going in. That was a real turning point for me. And then I met my oldest daughter's dad. He was very dedicated to me, and helped me stay sober for a little while. And then we became pregnant. And the day I found out I was pregnant, I quit stripping. I completely quit stripping. I changed my phone number. I erased all the phone numbers in my contact information. And I stopped hanging around at all the places that I ever hung out at. And I always refer to this time of my life as my rebirth. I was reborn that
Right.
day. My baby, it was my angel. And I knew that I needed to give this little human being the best possible life. And I knew I didn't have any examples. So I took parenting courses. I started counseling, and it was really hard. It was very lonely. It was very hard. I went from my phone ringing nonstop every day to go party and hang out to my phone never ringing. And it was an isolating experience. It was one that needed to happen. And I remember the change happening was so hard that I swear I had demons that were like blocking my way. I grew up Catholic, but at this point I hadn't practiced religion in probably a decade, but I knew I needed help. So I actually went to the church where I got my first communion and everything. And I saw the priest and I did my confessions and I admitted to all my wrongdoings. And I swear I thought he was going to kick me out of the church. I really truly thought he was going to look at me in absolute disgust, because that's how I saw myself. And he just looked at me and he said, "You know what? I'm not even going to make you repent." And I was like, "What?" He was like, "You have so much insight into the things that you've done. And it sounds to me like you have already tortured yourself enough with the guilt and the shame from the things that you have done." He's like, "You're forgiven. You're done." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I went to go leave and he grabbed my arm. Somebody went to go talk to him and he quickly grabbed my arm and he said, "You know what?" He said, "You should write a book." And I was like, "What?" Somebody with a grade 9 education at that time, I'm like, "I can't write a book. I'm dumb as dumb can be. Like, this is like how I felt about myself."
Mm.
And he's like, "No, you need to write a book because your story is so significant that you're going to help people." And I think that that's what kind of gave me even more confidence, even more motivation to do good, because I'm like, yes, I can help people.
Mm.
It has not been a fast process. I started having babies young. As I mentioned, I was 20 20 years old when I got pregnant with my oldest. I had 2 more babies after that. So I stopped having children at the age of 29. I had my 3rd baby. And when I was 30, I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. I didn't just get my GED. I went back to high school and I
Cool.
took all the hardest courses you can possibly take. And I worked full time, 3 small children,
Wow.
and put myself through high school. And I finished high school and I haven't stopped going to school since. I still haven't written that book. There's a lot of demons in that part of my life that makes it a little bit difficult to move through, but I'm getting there. So needless to say, I was very, very, very happy and honored that you asked me to do this, because sharing my life story is the end goal. And I feel like this is a start.
Right. Well, that's the return. And I it's kind of cool to hear, the demons and the challenge, kind of that part you're in right now, or that at that age after, the beautiful fork in the road. I mean, there was a lot before that. I realized that, but when you got pregnant, and that was kind of that moment, that aware, conscious, because I really believe the hero's journey happens with consciousness, with awareness. Like there's a fork in the road and you're aware. Otherwise, you're just going to keep going on the road you're on. So there's a fork in the road and you choose to go into that challenge, which was huge. You even said that, there was the demons were there, just a classic adventure. Doesn't sound like an adventure, I'm sure, but I think you're just saying this all so clearly. And the return, the return is, not the book that's not written yet, but the return is happening right now. The gift of telling the story, of serving others from the power of your story that you've been through is huge. I don't think that can be overstated.
Yeah, I relate a lot with Joe Campbell's theory. I actually just watched his video again, the movie, after you asked me to do this, because I'm like, hey, I want to make sure I remember this correctly.
Sure.
And it's very true. Coming out of those hard times, you're now in a place where you're humbled. You're humbled enough to be able to share those experiences. I feel like before you go through that journey and come out the other side, you look at people who are on this side and you're like, wow, they're so cool. Look at how much, how knowledgeable they are and how much work they get and how successful they are. And I want to be that person. But then once you go through all this and you're out on this side, you're humbled. You're not seeing yourself as this great hero who's going to save the world. You're like, man, that was hard. And I really want to help people get through that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of times where you get to this messy part and you want to abort.
Yeah.
And you want to go back to the familiar.
Right.
But nothing will change if you keep going back to that familiar.
Absolutely. That's a powerful story. Let me say, are you open to supporting people that are on that journey right now? I hear that you already are doing that. I mean, the work at the shelter and, the places, even serving people as a first responder. That's serving in my mind. But this is a very unique story in terms of, the real issues with your mom and family growing up. I know some people can relate to that, unfortunately. And then there's on the streets and in the gang. I thought that was really well said, that when you said the things that you didn't get provided at home got provided in that environment by in a group or individuals that would be judged very harshly. But look at they were providing a home in a way, a safety. So there's some really interesting relatedness, I'm sure, to people that are watching and listening to this. So I wonder if that's something I like to say during these podcasts is, if there's someone that is specifically in this process of some of those specifics, are you open to them connecting with you afterwards?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. People can reach me in private messenger on Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
Um,
put all that in the
yeah.
liner notes or whatever you call them. Well, I really appreciate you spending this time. Is there anything in completion that you want to, anything else that you want to bring present in this moment?
You know what? I led a group today, and the topic I chose for today was shame and guilt.
Hmm.
And I didn't really correlate it with this, but with you asking me that, what I want to conclude is it doesn't matter what your situation is currently. It doesn't matter what your past was. Forgiving yourself and forgiving your situation that was handed to you is so important. And you deserve a good life. No matter what you have done, no matter what you are currently doing, you deserve a good life and you deserve to forgive yourself and you deserve to move forward. And there's nothing that can come in between you and a good life.
That's powerful, beautiful. That's a hero's journey, right? I hear that. Like, because obviously, whoever you're saying that to today or that's hearing this, you're saying that relative to them being in the thick of it, of their own demons and challenge and their own fork in the road where life took them in a direction. And I really love it. That's the gift. That's the return. Again, that's the gift is, no guilt. No, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to, what you just stated there. I really appreciate that. And how was that received today, may I ask, by the group?
It was received very well. We actually had I co-facilitate with another woman,
Yeah.
and we had counselors from outside the office coming into the room because we were all laughing. We were all having such a joyous,
Oh,
amazing time.
oh,
People were sharing their stories of their own struggles with being shamed as children, and that those shameful comments still running through their heads and through their bodies, and it went really well.
that's fantastic. I'm just I'm feeling that in the moment. Awesome. I really appreciate that and how lucky they are to have you. How lucky we are to have you. I'm thrilled that you joined me. I'm excited to kind of put this together. It's like I can't wait to kind of do the thing and get it ready and put out there so that you can put it so that I guess what I'm saying is I'm excited that you can put it out there too, because I did hear you say at one point, whoa, this is a big deal. Like, I don't usually tell this story. And yet here's an opportunity you will have to share this with people. They can click on it and link and hear that.
I told some of my residents today that we were doing this.
Yeah.
One of my residents, he was like, "Oh, you have no idea how hard it is." And we kind of were talking a little bit, and I was like, I used to be involved with gangs. And he was like,
Uh-huh.
"What?"
Uh-huh.
I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I need to hear this podcast."
Uh-huh. See, that's so correct, right?
Yeah.
That's so neat because people see you or whomever how they are face value in the moment they're seeing. They don't really realize what that journey that each individual has had up until now. And I've learned that lesson to take judgment away. I think I was very judgy, insecure and judgy for a long time. Judgy is not a word, but and I just feel free of that anymore because of exactly what we're talking about, where that guy slowing his chest like, hello, you pardon me, but it's because we've got, if we've done the work and done on the journey and we're relatively balanced and complete, somebody's not picking up on the toxic challenge and story and whatever that we might have gone through to get through to this point. So
Yeah.
I think that's neat. So yeah, I'm really thrilled that we're doing this to begin to let people have a glimpse at some of us. So so thank you so much. I really sincerely appreciate this time. What a lovely story and a lovely person, and how you're serving the world really makes me very happy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Finding Joe, the Hero's Journey podcast. I hope that you feel inspired, informed, entertained. Sure, I hope all of the above. We suggest that you take advantage of the guided meditation recording, which is linked below. As well, you're welcome to look at the yoga training courses that we offer, or visit the Take a Breath information on our website, or even to reach out to us, talk to us, become a guest on the podcast, or suggest a guest to us. Thank you so much for being part of this community.